But it's in Europe in 1930. We have the death fog.
December 1st, 1930. It was a cold morning on the north shore of Belgium when two men by the names of Leopold and Jean were taking up post at the Heist Range lighthouse. They were doing their usual maintenance work when suddenly one of them noticed something strange out over the ocean. Far
The
away,
ocean?
close to the horizon, there appeared to be a low-lying, dense white fog, and this fog was slowly creeping towards the shore.
That's
Of
creepy.
course, they weren't too concerned. Sea fogs are a somewhat common phenomenon. They can actually be quite beautiful. But this fog was different. This fog was much more dense than your typical fog. The ships out at sea who encountered the fog had to stop completely in their tracks as visibility was near zero. And the fog continued, slowly getting closer and closer until it finally came ashore, engulfing both the men and the lighthouse. The
Oh,
fog was so thick that they could hardly see a few feet in front of them. The men assumed it was just a short, foggy spell, and they waited for the fog to pass. But it persisted. Hours after hours, the immense fog endured. The fog then continued to move further inland. The townspeople on the edge of the city of Ghent could see the cloud slowly approaching them until it finally came over the entire city.
that's creepy.
People couldn't see a thing, and many even began to experience health issues, throat irritation, breathing difficulties, and coughing fits. The fog grew larger and larger as it continued to swallow up various towns and cities in Belgium. And this mysterious fog wasn't just affecting the people of Northern Europe. Across the English Channel, the same dense fog began to encroach on the southern part of England. It even reached London. In fact, by the end of the day, huge sections of Northern Europe were completely blanketed by the fog. Half of
Ugh.
France, half of England, parts of Holland, and all of Belgium were drowning in the white haze. So it was a super dense fog. Okay,
It's
what's
thick.
the big deal? I mean, ooh, water vapor. Well, this fog wasn't just super dense, it seemed to be toxic. In fact, it caused thousands to get sick, and in some cases, it even brought death.
Hmm. The death fog.
By the
Yeah.
next day, December 2nd,
Real quick, was the fog? You say you seen the fog? Was it based off of this? I'm assuming, because that's just a horror movie in real life. That's terrifying, especially with the creepy music and just see it approaching. Oh, and there's nothing you could do about it.
news of the fog was spreading. Newspapers throughout the entire world picked up on the story, featuring headlines like Death Cloud Strikes at Belgium, France. Strange malady hits many. Hospitals in Paris fill up. Scientists of Europe baffled at poison fog. One specific newspaper article titled Poison Fog Terrorizes Northeastern Europe stated, shaded portion of the map indicates region where impenetrable pale of fog is causing mysterious
That much?
strangling malady in northern France, Belgium, Holland, and England. Scientists are baffled by the mysterious epidemic, and the Belgian government is preparing to rush 20,000 gas masks for distribution among its inhabitants. The same newspaper article later compared the symptoms of the fog to that of the medieval plague, the Black Death. Did the
Really?
Black Death return to Europe? Had Nosferatu come into Brussels bringing a deadly plague? People were unsure, and they were terrified.
Yeah, I
Most
would
did their
be.
best to escape the mist by going inside or underground. Some even fled the area entirely to other parts of Europe. Many communities all over Northern Europe were being impacted by this fog,
You cannot
but
see.
there was one town in particular where the fog seemed extra toxic. Among the Meuse River in central Belgium lies the town of Engis. I'm not quite sure
Ingis.
how to pronounce that. Something like that.
Ingis?
Engis was a
Town.
riverfront community where trade and industry dominated the economy. The town had first encountered the fog at the beginning on December 1st, but the town's geography was unique. Being that it was on a river, the town was located in a valley surrounded by hills.
Near
So the
you.
fog was particularly dense in this town. It kind of all got funneled into this valley, and as the fog came over the town, people became sick almost immediately. And it wasn't just a couple dozen people that got sick. No, literally thousands in the town got so sick that they had to be hospitalized. By the end of the week, 60 people in the town would be dead. The average age of those who died was 62, but not every case was a slow and painful death. Louise Dames was enjoying the company of her friends at a local house party. Everything was going well. People were having a good time, and as it got late, people started to head out to go back to their homes.
Oh no.
Now, Louise Dames decided to walk home as her house was only a couple blocks away. Unfortunately, she wouldn't make it. As she was making her way home, a particularly dense section of the fog consumed her. She breathed in the vapor and almost instantly collapsed in the street.
What?
She was completely fine just a few minutes ago when she was at the party. That's what her friend stated. But as she was walking from the party to her home, in that short amount of time, she died. She was also one of the youngest victims, being only 20. Obviously, at this point, several people within the town panicked. Some of them tried to escape by running up the surrounding hills in an effort to get above the fog. And this would later prove to be a good idea, as most of those who went to higher ground ended up only having mild symptoms. Meanwhile, in the nearby town of Serang, again, the symptoms seemed to be particularly bad. While not quite as bad as those in Engis, hundreds in the town were still bedridden for days, many praying that this fog epidemic would come to an end.
My gosh.
Finally, after 5 days on December 5th, the fog faded, and the northeastern Europe death cloud nightmare was over. People throughout the world were curious to the origins behind this mysterious poisonous cloud. They even gave the sickness caused by the fog a name, fog asthma. Various theories quickly sprouted up. Some thought that maybe it was a German chemical gas company that somehow exploded or leaked all of its contents into the atmosphere, which then went across northern Europe. This was right after World War I, so
Oh, right after
people
World
remember
War
those
I.
toxic gases in the trenches. Some thought that volcanic gases may have escaped over the English Channel somehow and then slowly crept over Europe. Something like this actually happened in the 1700s. It's a pretty intriguing tale. Kind of sounds like something out of a disaster horror movie. Something
Yeah.
like The Mist. Have you guys ever seen The Mist?
Oh yeah, The Mist.
That movie, the ending of that movie is crazy. But
Never
this
seen
was
it.
a real event. This actually happened. So what caused this fog to form, and why was it so toxic? Well, fog in general can actually cause various mild health issues,
Huh.
especially to those who are more susceptible to allergens and respiratory problems. With these individuals, a thick fog can cause throat irritation, shortness of breath, and watery eyes, and of course, coughing. But typical fog
Pollutant concentration, fog traps smog, smoke, sulfur oxides, and nitrogen oxides, which irritate the lungs, eyes, and throat. Cold and humidity. Feel the cold and humidity right now. Cold, watery air can trigger chills, coughs, and worsen respiratory issues like bronchitis, while high humidity can foster germ growth. Reduced oxygen, fog can slightly lower oxygen levels, leading to tiredness or disorientation, particularly for those with heart or lung conditions. And eye strain, difficulty seeing through dense fog can strain eyes, causing headaches and nausea. That sounds terrible. It just, it's crazy. Fog just looks so innocent sometimes, but really it's just a nightmare, especially when driving and everything too. You know, it's almost like a jump scare. If it's really, really foggy, you see nothing, and then all of a sudden you see something come out, emerge from the fog.
shortness of breath, and watery eyes.
Crazy.
And of course, coughing.
Here he stands, a silent guardian, a watchful protector, a dark knight. Born of grief and forged in shadow, I know you're on that table again. Get down before you fall and hurt yourself. Welcome home, honey. I hope you had a good day at work. Do you want blue or lemon lime creatine Gamerade before your workout? Honey? Justice. If you want to get strong and energized to fight crime, drink Gamerade by GamerSupps. Zero sugar, electrolytes for hydration, plus more benefits and flavors of blue and lemon lime. Get yours today by using code SPIT at checkout to save 10%. Justice, justice, justice.
But typical fog cannot cause plague-like symptoms, and it most certainly cannot kill scores of people, as this newspaper headline states. So clearly, something else was at play.
64
Now, there
known
probably
dead.
was a little mass hysteria going on. I mean, everyone was talking about it in the papers. So, you go out, you think the fog is toxic, you breathe in a little bit of the fog, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're right, even though it's kind of all in your brain. Okay, so there was probably some of that. But obviously, mass hysteria cannot cause death. At least I don't think it can. Maybe it can. I don't know. But clearly, in certain specific towns like Engis, something really was going on. In the days following the event, scientists were perplexed by this freak fog. Answers needed to be found, so the Belgian government put together a commission to investigate the incident. The commission sought the knowledge of Kaj Roholm, who was a leading expert in Europe on chemical and fume toxicities. Roholm traveled to the town and he noticed something almost immediately. All of the freaking factories. All in all, the town had 27 factories. There was a zinc factory, there was a fertilizer factory, there was even an explosive factory. And all these factories produced toxic fumes. This was 1930 after all, and air pollution was not really on the minds of many back then. Roholm had theorized that the immense fog and atmospheric conditions in general during the death fog may have pulled some of these toxic fumes towards the surface, where they were then inhaled by people. This then led to illness and, in some extreme cases, death. But is such a theory scientifically possible? Well, a very similar event happened just 18 years later in Donora, Pennsylvania on October 27, 1948. Right before Halloween, a thick fog came over the town of Donora in southwestern Pennsylvania. Just like the town in Belgium, this fog also made hundreds of people sick and ended up killing 20 people. And again, just like that town in Belgium, Donora was a town that featured heavy industry with lots of pollutants. But a lot of cities have factories and pollutants. Why were these two communities so unique? Was there a certain pollutant from the factories that was causing people to get super sick? Yes, hydrogen fluoride and sulfur dioxide. Steel and zinc mills in both cities produced high levels of hydrogen fluoride, and the combustion of coal from other factories in both towns created high levels of sulfur dioxide. When these chemicals are inhaled, it's not good. They can cause major health issues and even death. But did this fog really pull the pollutants closer to the ground? Is there an atmospheric condition that can cause this to happen? Yes. Let's talk about the heat inversion phenomenon. So normally, the higher up you go, up in the atmosphere, the colder it gets. Temps on the surface tend to be warmer because of surface heat. The ground itself is kind of warm and it radiates heat into the air above the surface, so that ground surface air tends to be warm. The temp also goes down as pressure goes down, and the higher up you go in the atmosphere, the lower the pressure, because there's less atmosphere above you. That's a normal situation, but during a temperature inversion, this is flipped. Cooler air is actually near the surface while warmer air is higher up. This can occur when a warm front moves over an area. Remember, warm air is less dense than cool air, so that cool air can sink to the surface, and if there's enough humidity in the cool air region, fog will typically form below the inversion threshold. And here's the thing, it can't escape because convection cannot occur. There's a layer of hot air above the cool air, it can't go up. This is a good example right here. Okay, you see this smoke? This is a little fire in Scotland. Notice how the smoke cannot rise above this threshold right here? That's because there's a warm pocket of air right here and the cooler air is stuck on the bottom, so the smoke cannot escape. The same would be true with factory fumes. And if this occurs and the factories keep producing their goods and the fumes keep going, it just gets worse and worse and worse. The problem is even worse if the town is in like a valley or surrounded by mountains. Then there's like no way at all for that air to escape. If you look at Donora and Engis on a map, they kind of look like the same town in a valley on a river. By the way, there's a term for this phenomenon. It's called smog. Have you heard of smog? Smog used to be a major problem in the Western world back in the day. Thankfully, we are now more worried about it, so it's not as big of a problem anymore, even though it does still occur. Anyway, even though smog was more common back in the day, extreme, intense episodes of smog were generally uncommon. But if atmospheric conditions were just right, they did occur. One example came on November 28th, 1939, aka Black Tuesday in St. Louis, Missouri. The smog was so bad that day, the sun could barely shine through, creating a dark day over the city. Some locals even referred to the event as the day the sun didn't shine. New York City saw over 100 deaths from a bad smog event in 1966. And perhaps the worst smog event ever came during the Great Smog of London on December 9th, 1952. It's estimated that over 10,000 people were killed during this event, and over 100,000 fell ill. So now we know the mystery of the death fog. It was just the result of a temperature inversion over a large part of northeastern Europe. It seemed
Oh,
to be a more
really?
extreme example of a temperature inversion, and if certain communities had specific factories or were located in a valley, they were at risk for breathing in toxic fumes. Human pollution and weather can lead to disaster. But not all death fogs are human made. Some are completely natural, and there's nothing we can do to prevent them. One
Mm.
such example of a rather mysterious death fog event that was completely natural occurred on August 15th,
Natural?
1984. In the evening, several locals in Matam in the West Province of Cameroon heard a loud explosion. Shortly after the explosion, a strange white smoke-like cloud appeared on the right side of a nearby lake, Lake Monoun. This white cloud stayed close to the ground and slowly spread out around the lake. As it approached villagers and low-lying areas, death came quick. Over 30 people were quickly killed after breathing in the fumes. A few did survive, and they claimed that the white cloud smelled bitter and acidic. Elevation, again, was key to survival.
Hmm.
During the event, a truck drove through the cloud and quickly broke down. As it was stranded there, 12 people died inside the truck, and there were only 2 survivors. These 2 survivors escaped death by getting on the roof of the truck. Even that small amount of
Wow.
elevation made all the difference. The cloud eventually faded and atmospheric conditions returned to normal. Experts were quite perplexed over the event at first. Why would a cloud randomly appear over a lake, travel around, and then kill over 30 people? It
Crazy.
didn't make sense. They had never seen anything like that before. But unfortunately, they would finally get their answer when 2 years later, it happened again. Another very similar event occurred at another lake nearby. However, this time was much worse. On August 21st, 1986, another white smoke-like cloud formed next to Lake Nyos, but this time nearly 1,800 people were killed. Again, the cloud seemed to have formed around the lake from the lake itself. Clearly, these 2 events were connected, and geologists quickly determined that underwater carbon dioxide gases were to blame. You see, both of these events were caused by something known as a limnic eruption. Limnic eruptions are extremely rare. In fact, there have only ever been 2 recorded cases. The 2 events we just talked about. Limnic eruptions, also referred to as lake overturn, are when large deposits of dissolved CO2 gases loaded at the bottom of various lakes escape to the surface in an eruptive-like event. This could be due to an
Like geyser?
earthquake shaking them up, or like a landslide, maybe even volcanic activity. Either way, it's like opening up a pop bottle, and you know how like the bubbles like go to the top? It's the same thing. While it's only
Hmm.
happened twice in modern history, there are several other limnically active lakes that could erupt at any time. These lakes
Lakes
are
could
sometimes
erupt.
called exploding lakes, the most notable being Lake Kivu in Africa. At that specific lake,
Exploding?
scientists have detected huge amounts of CO2 towards the bottom. And interestingly, they have also determined that the lake's marine population seems to go extinct every 1,000 years or so, which means that there's probably an eruption every 1,000 years or so.
Eh.
Please don't go near this lake. Breathing
Okay.
in a toxic
I'm good.
cloud or fog is never good. But it's also good to be reminded that fog in general by itself is dangerous because you can't see through it. There's actually a deadly phenomenon known as a rogue fog. Think of it like this: it's sunny, it's nice, all of a sudden, boom, it's foggy. There have been
The
reports of
forecast is so
intense
dumb.
fog squalls that pop up out of nowhere that then cause major problems and accidents. One such example came in 1990 in what is known as the Interstate 75 fog disaster. There is a
Oh
certain
no.
section of Interstate 35 in Tennessee that is
75.
particularly susceptible to intense fog, and from time to time, intense fog waves obscure sections of this interstate. One such example was in 1973 when 3 were killed in a collision due to poor visibility that came out of nowhere.
Ugh.
However, that accident was much more tame when compared to the large car pileup on December 11th, 1990. Around 9 a.m. local time, a dense fog quickly came over the interstate, causing a large semi traveling southbound near exit 36 to slow down abruptly. Another semi, right behind that semi, smashed into it. And then all of a sudden, a huge chain
Uh,
reaction of accidents occurred. All in all, 99 vehicles were destroyed. At the time, this was the largest car accident ever recorded. There were dozens of injuries and unfortunately 12 deaths. Apparently, this fog formed extremely quick. One eyewitness claimed that it was like someone threw a blanket over them, just like like it was just like that. If that were to happen, there's not much you can do to prevent an accident. Since the event, several caution signs have been installed along this section of the interstate to warn motorists of the possibility of sudden fog. So, yes, condensation is not something to mess around with. Be safe out there in the fog, and if you're ever in a toxic death fog situation, get to higher ground. That's what we've learned from all these events. Thank you so much
Alright.
for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for the information. Oh, that's creepy. It's right. I was walking home from school and almost got killed by a car when fog appeared. I've seen some of those pileups, and it's so scary because you don't know there's a pileup at the time until you're basically on it and don't have time to stop. That's terrifying. I just wonder because I've never been in like super dense fogs or anything like that before, so I don't know exactly what they look like. So if someone's coming out of nowhere, like, oh, dense fog, it's nothing, whatever. Yeah, no, apparently it's a lot different. That's terrifying. And the thing is, after you're in that collision, now you're just hoping and praying that no one hits you behind, especially like a semi or something. That's terrifying.